Hey there, friends. Welcome to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow. There will be no sponsor of this video today, and for very good reason. Quite frankly, I don't want to expose my sponsors to any more, let's face it, my videos can be a little controversial sometimes, and I get that. I understand that I'm an acquired taste and that some people just can't handle the way I deliver factual data and give my opinions on that information. But make no mistake, I do this from here. I do that because I feel like I'm talking directly to you as if we're having a normal conversation, and that's how normal people talk. They don't candy coat things. Most normal people don't candy coat things, and they speak very blunt and factually to one another. In fact, I don't honestly want to have conversations with people who aren't upfront and honest and blunt in conversations. So therefore, I'm not going to, again, expose any of my potential sponsors to the blowback they might get from this video. This is a topic that's tough for me. And the reason why is because if you haven't seen this story about these two gay men who have since been sentenced to 100 years in prison for pimping out their adopted boys and sodomizing them and a number of other things. They were adopted from a special needs organization. Now, you guys know that I have a special needs son. I pride myself on being the protector of someone who can't protect themselves. And that's not always a special needs child. In this case, it may be because they were adopted. These are two brothers who were adopted from a special needs organization. So I'm just assuming that they may be special needs or maybe on the spectrum or something like that. But regardless, my whole point is my son can't defend himself. Whether he was 3, 10, or now 16, my son cognitively is a 2-year-old. He will never be able to defend himself. You could walk right up to him, punch him right in the mouth. You could abuse him. You could, unfortunately, do what these guys did. And I'm having to be careful with the words that I use because of YouTube. My son would not attempt to defend himself. In fact, he wouldn't call you out, and he wouldn't ask you to stop, and he would not report you because cognitively he doesn't understand that's what he's supposed to do. I can't explain to you how much I despise people who prey on that weakness. I'm looking as deep into my camera as I can right now to try to connect with people out there so that you understand how deep in my moral fiber this is embedded in me. It's hard for me to be okay with anyone conducting any evil or violence against anyone, but especially children. But you really cross that line when it's special needs people, because a child, and I'm certainly not saying a child can defend himself, it's equally as bad, but a child can run for help. A child can scream, and most children, neurotypical children, can run for help, scream for help, tell somebody what happened. The special needs children typically can't and don't. And for anyone to prey on that level of innocence, it makes me lose sight. If I know somebody is guilty, it would make me lose sight on any benefit of due process regarding that person. And God forbid I be the one who finds that person committing those atrocities towards a special needs child of some sort. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to go so far that I jeopardize the existence of this video, because it's important to me that this message gets out. And I do have a message, by the way. If you haven't heard about it, two gay men in their 30s, well off, well-to-do. I do not believe they profited from the pornography that they created from their adoption with these two little boys, because they both had decent careers where they brought in a good amount of money. But I do believe that they exploited, obviously, and admittedly on their case, the exploitation and the abuse of these young boys. I believe they were 8 and 10 years old at the time. They are brothers. Little surprised at that because, having, in many cases when these kids get in foster care, they're not always kept together. And thankfully, if there's any peace and solace for these two young boys, at least they were together. You know what I mean? At least that connection was there and they weren't completely alone. But these two little boys were adopted by these two men. These two men did unspeakable things to these little boys. Again, as I stated earlier, they adopted the two brothers who are now 12 and 10 from a special needs agency. The children were raised by this gay couple under the guise of a happy family in an affluent Atlanta suburb. The district attorney Randy McGinley noted that William and Zachary, who are these gay parents, quote, truly created a house of horrors and put their extremely dark desires above everything and everyone else. Now, despite these two men being well off, one was in the banking sector and one was working in government, apparently that wasn't good enough for them. They would force the two young brothers to have sex with them on a regular basis and also film the abuse for making pornography that they distributed to other people. They would even brag about the alleged abuse to some of their friends in that community. Evidence that police found backs this up. One of the couple's friends told police that Zachary once shared images of one of the boys being abused on Snapchat and wrote, "I'm going to F my son tonight. Stand by." The two men even used social media platforms to pimp the two brothers to at least two men in the local sex ring. I can't use some of these words because, again, the video will get bumped. I listened to some of the jailhouse recordings of family members or friends talking with these two gay men, and the lack of remorse, the, I guess, refusal to believe that they had done something wrong. In their minds, this did not seem like a horrible thing to them. One of them actually said in the police recordings, you can find this online, I'm not going to play that here. Some of it's a little difficult to listen to. He stated that, "I don't sleep with any clothes on." So when the police busted in at midnight, they caught this man with no clothes on. They tackled him to the ground with no clothes on. They put him in the back of a cruiser with no clothes on. This guy is complaining. Now, understand what we're talking about here. They were, and I can't use the words because of YouTube, they were doing things in every conceivable way sexually to abuse the two sons that they had adopted. They had betrayed any amount of trust that these two young boys likely sought being adopted anyway. And being the age they were adopted, 8, 10 years old, they had lived apparently with somebody at some point that I don't want to say had failed them as parents, because it could have been a foster home that was just waiting for that next adoption. So it may not have been a bad situation, but they were definitely taken from that home. So there's an issue of trust right there, right? There's an issue of safety, of feeling like you have a comfort world built around you. And likely that world was set up and played up when they were adopted by these two men. Then they proceeded to abuse them. My point in this, discussing the other guy who was handcuffed and placed in the back of the police car with no clothes on, is that in his jailhouse conversation on the phone with the friend or family member, he was complaining about how horrible it was and how there was just no dignity to it. That he sat in the back of a police cruiser for 4 hours while they searched their home. Do you understand the lack of remorse and the lack of awareness of somebody who is guilty of and admitted to everything in abusing these young boys? The betrayal of trust and all of that. Not to mention the heinous things they did and pimping them out to others. Not that it matters one way or the other, because one's just as bad as the other, but they weren't satisfied with just abusing them themselves. They had to pimp them out to somebody else. But he's complaining because he had to sit for 4 hours in the back of a cop car with no clothes on. That was his complaint. No dignity. I I can't wrap my head around that. That destroys any confidence in human spirit that I have built up over my 50-something years of existence. Like it just tears away at everything that I want to believe in my fellow man. Because I do, guys. I want to believe that my fellow man is a good person. I want to believe that every person when I drive down my road is a kind and decent person. And that if I needed something, or my special needs son who could not protect himself, that if he needed something, that they would be willing to help out. But what this does is shatters that world, and it makes you realize that there may not be anybody out there to back you up. You know, I know there's other good people out there, don't get me wrong, many of you guys. But I'm talking about in your small little world. That's why so many of us, the older we get, the smaller our circles get. Because we lack trust in our fellow man because of stories like this. There's collateral damage here. There are two young boys who were betrayed beyond any sense of the word. This ain't like dad saying, I'm going to come to your soccer game, and he doesn't show up. That's that's forgivable stuff right there. Something came up at work, he couldn't make it. This is on a whole different level of evil and disgust. And again, I can't help but go back to this. Try to put yourself in those children's mind. And maybe they are like my son and they're cognitively a 2-year-old. So possibly they don't understand what's going on whenever it's happening to them. And in this case, I kind of pray that that is the case, that they did not realize or understand that they were being abused by two people who were supposed to be taking care of them and their actual protectors, right? But if they did know what was going on, can you even, I can't, but can you imagine the sense of betrayal in these two young boys? Knowing those are the people who are meant to take care of me. You often hear the phrase, there's a special place in hell for somebody like that. And you know, guys, I honestly have to say this, and I'm being as truthful as I can with you. I don't know if that's true. I hope it's true. I hope it is. I hope there truly is a place as bad as where they put these little boys in their own minds. I hope they can suffer mentally at least as bad as those children had to. I'm not even talking about the physical aspect of it. But I truly, sincerely hope there was a certain level of suffering that far exceeds what these young boys had to experience. This is also another area that I struggle with when it comes to the judicial system. I truly feel like in my heart, and this is going to sound cold, and this is probably why I'm not an attorney or a judge or anything like that, but I truly in my heart believe that if a person intentionally commits a certain heinous crime, I'm talking about murder, rape, the molestation, anything like that, I truly believe if it was not in something that happened by happenstance or, an accident, and when I say that, I mean, let me just give you a quick example. If somebody's driving down the road and their rearview mirror clips a cyclist and they murder them, I don't think they intentionally meant to do that. Was there carelessness, recklessness? Possibly. But they didn't seek that person out. But when other people seek someone out, like these two predators did, I truly feel like we have got to be honest about the punishment fitting the crime. 100 years in prison for each one of these guys, that's what they got. Now, granted, if they ever see a moment in general population, they probably are done. But 100 years, really? So they're going to live out the rest of their lives in jail, in prison. Whoop-de-doo. Oh, a little bit of mental anguish because they lost all their nice, cushy stuff that they had. Punishment ain't fitting the crime. The punishment is not fitting the crime. Why do you think these criminals are not afraid to do some of these things? Why do you think thieves steal as much as they do? Why do you think men who prey on women, and I'm being careful not to use those words, Why do you think adults who prey on children do it? Because the repercussions are not that bad for them, right? The punishment doesn't equal the crime. If the things that they were doing in their crimes actually happened back to them after sentencing, I do believe they would think twice. I do believe some of these people would say, I ain't doing that. Now, there may be some prison justice that happens to these two guys, likely, and that may be as close as we get to a punishment fitting the crime. But 100 years with free meals, free room and board, and somebody essentially protecting you, because I doubt they're going to put them in general population, that's not equal punishment. That's not equal to the crime that they committed. Not in any kind of way. So you have other people out there who are watching this, who have this same twisted thing in their minds, and they might be thinking, not too shabby, because their minds are already twisted anyway. These are not normal people. Please understand that. Before anybody gets angry with me, we are not talking about normal people. We are talking about sick and twisted individuals. And I'm not saying that because they're gay. I'm saying it because they are predators. And how to coincidentally manage to wind up with one another, go figure. But these are not normal people. You cannot rehabilitate that, what they did to those boys, out of these people. I don't care how long you put them in prison, what kind of counseling they have, or anything else, or how remorseful they seem. That is not something that can be rehabilitated out of them.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's so horrible.